Welcome to the Aligned Powerhouse, the podcast for executive women who are done leading from burnout and ready to rise from alignment. I'm your host, Dr. Brittany McGeehan, licensed psychologist, high performance and mindset coach, and guide for high-achieving women who are ready to lead, live, and love without abandoning themselves. Here, we unpack the nervous system truths, mindset shifts, and emotional patterns that drive your leadership so you can build power from the inside out. Let's get into it. Guys, today we are talking about the 5 myths that high-performing women are still believing. And today I'm zeroing in on one of my favorites, and it is the myth that says I can separate my personal life from my leadership, my career, essentially my work persona that I step into, okay? This is one of the most common myths that I hear clients walking in to my office with, and it's one of the reasons that in my coaching, in the clinical work that I do, there isn't a huge difference between the two. It's why I can't just do relationship coaching, and I also don't just do leadership coaching, right? I always tell people, I'm not going to get up in the weeds of like your P&L statement. You have a business advisor. You have an executive coach who's going to get in those weeds with you. I stay in my lane. But in terms of the inner flow of mastery of relationships, that's where I shine. And there's no difference. And I want to tell you what people think is happening versus what is actually going on and happening. So what people think happens is that you are at home and there is tension, there's stress, perhaps you're having conversations and they're the same conversations over and over and over again with your partner, and you're feeling as though there's no resolution, okay? You are in this setting, and the fantasy, and I have had it too, is that you walk through the front door, you've got your suit, you got your blazer, and you kind of like put on your lipstick, right? And once you walk through the front door of your office, that because you have put on this mask of having it all together, that all of a sudden you actually become this new person, and you're able to use a different part of your brain, you're able to move in a different way, and you are able to compartmentalize because we have different physical settings. Although sometimes we don't, with how often we're working from home right now, right? But that's the fantasy, is because the relationships I'm engaging in, because the environment I'm in, and because the demands that are being put on me are coming from a different source, all of a sudden, I am a new person. In reality, the common denominator here is you, right? And more specifically for what we are talking about today, the common denominator is that you and your nervous system are moving from setting A to setting B. You are responding to stimulus over here, and you're responding to a stimulus over here. The thing that, again, thinking back to yesterday, and I'll drop the link down below if you missed that live and you want to go listen to this, but the thing that helps us to actually execute, make decisions, help us interpret our environment is the nervous system, okay? We do not gain access to a brand new nervous system just because we're going to work. It doesn't happen. Now, it may look different, right? It may look different. It may sound different. It may feel in our body different because we are more defended in a work environment, which, like, thank goodness, we don't need people who are melting down all of the time at work, running businesses, right? You have to have a level of composure. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting in C-suite. But the reality is you don't become a new person, even if you're able to access a different set of actions or thought process. Okay. So I say this all the time. What I hear is that, my personal relationships are a mess. I have a hard time because I'm continuing to want to rescue everyone over and over and over again. And I don't know why, but I'm anticipating what they need. I am anticipating what they want. I am making sure that they are my number one. And whenever they have an issue, when they have a hard day at work, when they have a problem with a family member, I am there. I'm ready to listen. I am all in, right? So one, that's called the rescuer reflex. It is. And it's also this idea of putting someone ahead of you, right? Well, that translates really beautifully into a work environment, right? For the company, or for your business. because again, you're not attending to any internal stimuli. Instead, you're paying attention to what everyone else in the room needs from you, which when you're in a place of leadership and high pressure, this bodes really well because you're anticipating what your clients are going to need. You are anticipating what your team is going to need. And from an operations perspective, it's really going to help you stay 3 steps ahead. Okay. So the exact same nervous system, pattern, repetition, process here that is running you into the ground at home is also helping you to quote unquote thrive at work from a purely like revenue perspective, right? I imagine your team loves you because you're willing to put them, you're like ready to dive in front of a bus for them, right? And even if you're not at that level, the same pattern, the same dynamic is there. And here is what I know is that if you are over functioning at work, you are absolutely over functioning at home, right? The issue with this is that there's tremendous hidden cost here. One, if you're in a place of leadership, because this tends to be like the number one thing I push people on, is they come in and they're like, well, this works great. I don't want to lose my edge. I don't want to lose who I am. I don't want to lose revenue. So how are we going to figure that out, right? You want me to come in and do this work. And what I always have to clarify is like, you're not doing this for me. Me and my marriage, we got those things figured out. Me and my business, we've got those things figured out. I feel solid about that. This is like purely if you want to do this work. If you are interested in not getting a divorce, if you're interested in having relationships with your children when they are adults and they're having children, if you are interested in being able to enjoy the life that you've worked so hard to build, right? That's all on you. I'm not going to sit here and hold your hand and push you to come and do this stuff, right? So that's thing number one here. But the other issue here is that if you're running yourself into the ground at work, you're not truly allowing your team to be a team. We can't learn in an environment when everyone is doing things for us or they're putting the fire out for us. As someone in a place of executive leadership, running a company, running a business, right? You have to let your team either rise to the demands on their own. Now, I'm not saying they don't need support. Like it is your job to scaffold and support and teach and set them up for support or success, right? But what I am saying is that if you do it for them, you are crippling them. And the same goes at home. You have to allow your partner to show up for you. You have to allow your children to learn how to take care of themselves, right? If they have been coddled because you have been over functioning, because that is where you find your sense of worthiness, then the people around you have not truly been allowed the opportunity to either show up or not, right? And it doesn't really matter because neither of you have been in reality. So, and the issue and the thing that happens here is that you're depleting your nervous system. So again, I want you to imagine that your nervous system is a river and there are boulders in the river because again, nervous system is electrical in your home, in your house, right? We want resources flowing. We want them moving. But there are these big boulders. I focus on boulders that happen 0 to 18, somewhere around there because they're the biggest. They're the most impactful. It is taking the most additional resources to move around those boulders. But there's additional boulders as you move down the river, right? If you are constantly adding more boulders, even if they're like, maybe they're more pebbles, right? And but you're constantly throwing them in because I'm masking at work, because I am over functioning. I'm rescuing everyone. I am like, fine, I will get it done. Don't worry about it. And then at home, I'm doing the same thing because my partner doesn't want to plan date nights. He doesn't want to step in and do bedtime with the kids. He doesn't want to pour into this relationship intellectually, but this is the relationship that I'm choosing to be in. And in order to make that work in my head, I'm going to overplan. I'm going to overstep in, right? I'm going to step in when the kids are getting dysregulated and it's really freaking him out. And so I'm like going to walk in and rescue him because of that, right? It's fine. I'll just handle the kids, handle dinner, and I'll handle this and this and this. When you do that every single time that you are not attending internally and you're having to break that mind-body connection, I want you to imagine that you're throwing a big old rock in that river, okay? So hands up if you have a dam in your river. this is an issue because we need access to these resources. We need that water flowing in order to feel things like joy, in order to feel things like wonder, in order to feel things like curiosity, or to be able to access our clarity, right? Our vision, what we want in this world, in order to be able to sit with ourselves enough to have healthy intimacy in relationships, to tolerate being seen, right? This cannot happen if we are too busy tossing rocks into the river over and over and over again. So in order to allow, right, how I want you to reframe this is that we cannot control our way into stronger relationships. Now, I believe in healthy communication. I believe in handing someone the roadmap, but I do believe there's a line and there's a difference between capitalizing on a strength and utilizing those resources versus stepping into a place of control. And only you can know what that is, right? But I want you to get very, very honest with yourselves about what pattern am I enacting at home and how is that also translating into work, right? And here's the next step. If you want a gold star, if you want some bonus points that I'm going to leave you with this morning, is how is this pattern replicating or continuation of a pattern that you experienced in childhood? Okay, because that is a very regressed response. This idea of I need to do everything for everyone around me, even though I'm literally sitting in a place of leadership or equal in relationship, right? And so this tells me that your nervous system knew this pattern. There were boulders way earlier before. We want to find those. If you truly want to go in and rewire your relationships, we want to figure out where did this pattern show up first, okay? A lot of times when I'm talking with clients, this has literally shown up so many times, like this week, and it's only Tuesday. There's something in the water. This is kind of how it happens, is everyone starts to go through the same thing at the same time. But I've had so many people who are like, I need to address and have healthy confrontation with this specific person, usually in my business, right? I really need to have a clarity conversation so we can adjust expectations and therefore we can get on the same page and like we're off to the races running. And I'll tell them, yes, this is true. And I want to talk about the fact that this is the exact same thing you did with mom. Because guys, if you address what happened with mom, if you address what happened with dad, again, not in a blame and shame sort of way, but simply in a, this is where it started. Oh my gosh, it makes the conversation with this unaligned client, with this team member who really needs to step up and start getting everything, like they should get their life together a little bit, right? Otherwise, they're not going to be in your team. It makes those conversations so much easier because you're knocking out that boulder that happened or that was present earlier on in the river, and it gives you plenty of space to move forward, right? All those cognitive resources, the clarity, the regulation is going to flow if we address where it started. So this is part 2 in this series. Tomorrow we are talking about the myth that energy depletion is not a to-do list or a strategy issue. And yeah, I go deeper into, so all of this, what we are talking about is called the parallel process. Okay. And it is this aspect, theory, component of therapy that therapists use to keep a pulse on the relationship with their clinical clients. And I use it a ton and I teach my clients to use it and to monitor it in their business relationships with their children or with their partners. Like we are all connected in terms of our nervous system moves setting to setting. Once you learn that, once you can pick up on this and you recognize all of these things are connected, it truly does make you a master of your universe and helps you get into a place of clarity so much quicker. So this is what I am teaching my clients to do in one-to-one containers as well as the retreats. And now it is what I'm going to teach you to do on my podcast. So the Aligned Powerhouse Podcast drops in just 6 days, 5 days. I don't know. It comes out September 1st, guys. It comes out next Monday. I'm so excited. And I will drop the link to that in the comments so that you don't miss it. All right, guys. Thanks for being here this morning.
We will see y'all soon.
Alrighty, friend, that is all for today's episode of the Aligned Powerhouse Podcast. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And do me a favor, if this episode resonated, I want you to share it with another powerhouse woman in your life who is ready to lead and love from a place of self-trust. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a quick rating or review. It really does help more women find this work. New episodes drop every week. Until then, lead with self-trust and let yourself be seen.